Hello, everybody, and welcome to the ninth episode of Leadership Talks. I hope you are enjoying this talk series. I'm Rupam Shah, and today I'm with someone who's young and dynamic, and somebody who has created an alternative education system which prepares students for life and fosters future work readiness. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Dr. Chetna Keni, founder, Orinco Academy, Bangalore. She is a doctorate in educational psychology, and before coming to education for good 10 years, she has worked in corporates in big companies. We will try to find out the reason as to why did she make a shift from corporate to education. She is an award-winning entrepreneur and also a path-breaking educationist. Let's directly get into a conversation with her to find out what were her ideas and thoughts behind creating an ecosystem which caters to progressive education. Hi, Chetna, and welcome you to this talk series. It's so lovely to have you over here. And I'm sure that all our viewers are going to be taking back a lot of things with respect to progressive education, and they might want to implement in their own schools, or the parents would like to do it with their own kids. So, to begin with, Chetna, you have worked in corporates for a long number of years. And
Yeah.
after that, you decided to start this particular school. So, the journey of leaving a corporate job, starting a school, do you think it was easy? This decision was easy to leave a corporate job, a well established, well paying corporate job, and then starting something new of which you don't know what might happen. So, was this decision or the transition easy?
Um, I actually never reached that stage of making a sudden decision. It was never a sudden decision. So, right from childhood, I've been somebody who wants to make a difference to the community around me. So, I was constantly looking for ways and means in which I can do something different that will impact lives around me. But as we grow, our education system and our societal expectations, we're all supposed to enter into corporate in some way. And that's what I did. But while being there when my child was born and while looking at the education system, I realized there are huge gaps in whatever should be done for their survival and for them to thrive in their world when they grow up versus what is exactly happening. And around 2000 when he was born is when this journey started of questioning the education system and whether that is what I wanted him to be in, because I couldn't see that satisfying his needs when he will be 25, that is in 2025.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the main reason we started looking out for different kinds of schools, different kinds of philosophy. So a lot of research started in that way, but alongside we realized that there's no school really which is completely focusing only on children and their needs and their unique needs. So basically all of us say that we are all child centric, right? But
Yeah.
being child centric means acknowledging the aspect that every child is different,
Yeah.
and every child has their own path of evolution and their own needs and their own motivations and learning styles and all of that. How do you create an education system that fits around that child rather than expecting the child to fit into that system,
Right.
right? And somewhere around 2006 is when we decided we will homeschool. And I was still working in corporate, but this opportunity again made me do like a 50-50 between working and discovering what education actually means to my child. And that's when I started Toolkit for Life as a project, where I started looking at how children can be impacted with skills that will become part of their toolkit, and not necessarily only give them packets of certificate that we all came out
Right.
with.
Yeah. Yeah.
So then around I also started educating myself, doing courses in psychology and education. I did a post graduation also. So while I was doing these things, I met a lot of people, learned a lot of things in this area, learned what to do, what not to do in the field of education, discovered what is not working, why it is not working, how do humans actually learn, and how we can bring out the true potential in every human being without really putting them into different boxes having the same kind of expectations from them.
Mhm.
That is when around 2011, by then I had worked with a lot of children, and my homeschooling journey, everything was quite out in the open because of media and all of those things. And people approached me saying, we really like what you do with your child and the other children that you're doing. Why don't you start a full time system? So why
Mhm.
don't you start something more like a school? And it's something that I hadn't thought of ever.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to make a difference, and I knew that I wanted to take the system that I developed to every child in our country, but
Mhm.
hadn't really thought about this. And that is when parents came around and said, we trust and we will put our children here. You start off. And I felt, okay, let me start with say 5 or 10 students, and let's
Mhm.
see what happens. But that year we had 25 students. That's how Orinco began. We had parents whom I could tell, look, I know what to do in terms of education. I don't know how to run an organization,
Yeah. Mhm.
right? And how do we do this? And that is when I realized the power of a community. I was open enough in every area of my vulnerability, put out there and said that, I can't do this, I can't do this, I don't know how to do this, how do we set this process? And that's how Orinco became a very, very unique school in itself. Even today, we don't have the typical HR policies, we don't have many processes that many schools follow actually. They're totally different, and that's because we just made our own stuff. That's why for me, transition never meant that I had to let go of something suddenly. I had to sit and think, do I want to do this or not? It
Okay.
just happened, and
It
that's why
happened.
I sincerely feel that Orinco is a gift from the universe to the children, and I was just chosen to take that ahead.
Lovely. Actually, so what you're saying is that it just happened. It happened on its own. People started, the right kind of people started walking in and then supporting and then suggesting you to start a school for the benefit of a larger community. And as you said, community was something which was a most strong factor over here, which actually forced you and in fact asked you that, okay, do it at a bigger level and I think it'll benefit everyone.
Yeah,
That's
and I
lovely.
think the only thing that I didn't do that most people do is I never resisted it.
Hmm.
I did not bring a lot of intuition, a lot of logic into it. I actually went by intuition. I truly believed in the power of universe, and I said, okay, this is what is asked of me. Let me do this.
Okay.
And I somehow totally believe in the power of people around me that are standing by me. Together, we can do a lot, and that's why fear was never part of this whole deal.
Great. So, as you said that people came in, they themselves offered that they would like to contribute, and you don't have an HR policy and things like that. One of my queries were this as well: that how is it that you basically choose teachers, because it's a very different kind of a system. You're focusing more on skills, and for such a thing, you need teachers who are more innovative, who are more creative, who can do it. How is it that you choose your teachers? What are those things which you look into the teachers, and what are those things you feel that once they come in, I'll be able to take care of?
See, the power of human potential is such that where there is a will, there is always a way. And from day one, we've only looked at people who have a will to bring about change and who believe in this system
Mm-hmm.
and who are passionate enough to make that happen. And one of the qualities I look for is for them to be humane people. If they have that, they do not have hierarchy in their minds with respect to children are so and so, and parents are this, and
Yeah.
teaching is this, and they don't have this thought process of all the knowledge to be in the teacher's head or in books, and that has to be
Yes.
downloaded into the children. As
Correct.
long as they don't have it, I have never sent away someone who's coming for work, and they have done amazing jobs. I've had people who didn't know a word of English who joined our art and craft team, and today I think she's good enough, not only in English but in art and craft. She can lead the country on a new curriculum altogether, right? So basically that's what I'm saying: where there's a will, there is a way, and we have proved it. We have n number of people working for us. We all became that support system for them wherever they had something lacking. They became our support system where we had something lacking. Basically it's always, I've never wanted to show off or prove a point to parents, so
Mm-hmm.
I've never had to hide something. And that is why I could always put out the team and say, this is the team that we have, and this is what we're excellent in, and this is what we're learning how to do. So you'll be amazed, my first set of preschool teachers, I took women who were extremely motherly, kinds, who were very simple women. And we also, of course, had a language teacher and a math teacher and all of that aspect as well. But mostly these were very, very, very simple women. And the quality of English was not so good in these women, because the intent was there and the capability was there, and children just absolutely loved them. But the English was not good enough. You won't believe it. There was a parent who actually set up English classes and trained them over the year.
Oh, wow.
And they're still with us now, the children, the teachers, and they no longer need English lessons, definitely. But this is what I'm trying to say about the power of the community.
Yes, great. So it's the single most requirement is the passion to do something. If that is there in a person, you would say that yes, come in. Rest, I think the community itself is supportive enough, and people grow along with that.
We've had so many people that have worked with us, volunteered with us, just been with us. We have so many times when a teacher comes and says, "Can I just hang around here for a week or two?" And we've allowed that, and that's where our children gain a lot. They see innumerable amount of people, all in and out of Aurinko, and that also is sort of curriculum for them.
Yeah. Great. So the children, they learn from the people also who are around. So how is it that, how can you say that Aurinko is different from all the other schools? So if you could just tell me those differentiating factors.
Yeah, see, one of the things that happened was we worked so silently without looking into any other schools, or trying to be in competition or trying to do anything different. I always knew that we wanted to have a school that will skill children and that will ensure that they have a toolkit at the end of their lives. And that is why we took things in a very natural way and started working with children. So over a period of time, Aurinko has become a school that has perfectly balanced academics and the so-called non-academics. Generally, we call non-academics as things that are not math, science, English, social science, studies, and language, unfortunately. But that is what I call it is the beauty of life. Life doesn't exist. For us, academics is only about 30% of what we do, and still we cover 100% of it. It's not that we are compromising on academics, but for us, that is also skill. So reading, writing, spelling, math, logic, computation, your concepts, your application, phenomena, everything is a skill that we are trying to develop in the children. Alongside, definitely we work on their empathy, their decision making, their conflict management, their cooperation, collaboration, all the 21st century learning skills. Alongside, we work a lot on art, craft, theater, sports. There is no choice in Aurinko for activities. You have to do everything because that is what defines the quality of life. Happiness index in life is very high if you have a balanced life where you are enjoying and finding fun in everything that you do. So if your passion becomes your work, it will be much more happier life is what we know. And that is why we believe that skilling is for fulfillment. And when you say skilling is for fulfillment, all the focus is on skilling. So Aurinko has come about as this place which kind of has a complete package for a child to grow in. The ecosystem, the Aurinko ecosystem is our first curriculum. So the space itself, if you actually go to our website or videos, if you observe, the space itself is a learning tool because everything is open. There are no walls. How does a grade 1 and grade 10 work in the same space?
Okay.
How do you become tolerant, right? How do you learn to become aware of your being? How are you interacting with the environment around you? You live and eat and drink and move around with everybody in school, right? You go off to your nooks and corners to study certain things in your age groups, but then again, you are all together. So in that, all the 21st century learning skills automatically happen, frankly, without even having a curriculum. Based around that in particular, though we have, but that's not really the key for it. So you have this aspect, then you have the parents, and like I said, all the guests that come to Aurinko. So that brings in a totally different level of learning for the children because people come from across the world. A lot of people come to study Orinco from Ethiopia, from Kenya, and many places. Also, a lot of agents of social change. Whoever is trying to do social change, those kind of people come and see Orinco because this is a self-made, self-sustained community that we have. Right? So those people come. So for children, the academics that come from books per se is minimal. Basically, I think they're going to books just to figure out, oh yeah, I already know this, and this is what the book also confirms, right? So that is the uniqueness of Orinco again. And like I said, it's all of us put together who are making it happen. That is why also Orinco is unique. We also have very, very unique programs that generally don't happen, and also unique belief systems. If you see, we use NIOS for 10th and 12th.
Okay.
And that is not because we can't have any other curriculum. We can, definitely. But the kind of freedom that NIOS gives and the kind of subject combinations it gives and the depth in those subjects is for what we like it, right? How did we convince parents? You know how difficult it is. Because it's not easy to tell people to do something that no one else is doing around them in our country, because we have mostly herd mentality, right?
Correct.
So we've been using NIOS, which gives a lot of freedom. So our children, you won't believe it, even 10th, 12th children have enough amount of other things to do. Sometimes we joke that our preschool and our 12th grade are on similar kind of timetable.
Okay.
You know, because everybody is out there doing so many things, meeting people, so many industry visits and all of that, even in 10th and 12th. Board exams are just part of life. That's not what defines life. So these kind of things. We've come up with a very unique program for 11th and 12th, which is completely work-based. So we have different streams. We have a design preparatory program that will take on children in the work, in the design field from a work perspective. They'll be prepared for the next 10 years to not only survive in the college, but to thrive in their careers after they leave those colleges as well. So a lot of professionals, the children will be working with, and entrepreneurs, and see how they can hone up their skills for the design field. Similarly, we are doing something for teaching field. Children who want to be teachers or get into child psychology right from a young age, we are having them in 11th and 12th program. Similarly, a lot of the new age careers, say video logging or YouTube careers, and a lot of those careers which are not so famous, but are really fulfilling.
Eventually, they are going to become more famous, because I think these are the careers which the students or children will be taking on in another 6 to 7 or 10 years from now.
True. And there's so much taboo because of the adults around them. Right? Everybody feels these are not going to last, because the adults, unfortunately, are not aware enough. All of us, the teacher community, the school communities, the parent communities, we don't know what is coming up actually. You won't believe it. In 2010, a study was done, and they predicted that in 2020 there'll be a job called as quarantine specialist.
Okay.
People must have just brushed that aside. People may not even have looked into what quarantine is.
Yes.
But you see, it's there now. So. And the issue is that parents and educators, we are not really researching into the world of work.
Correct.
We are researching into world of education and how to teach and all those things. Yes, we're doing a lot of work, but it's not sufficient, or it's not relevant, because we're not looking into the world of work and the technological.
We have to be looking at least 10 to 15 years ahead, that what are those things which are going to gain more prominence. And as you see that now with AI and the other things coming in, the nature of jobs are going to change. The skills required are going to change. And I believe this is what you're working on. You're working upon making children do a lot of problem solving, complex problem solving skills. So I just want to know that within your class, I'm sure you also have a class system, grade 1, grade 2, grade 3. And all the children would be, moving from one class to another class, but they all would be at a different level. How is it that you cater to these differences in their competence? And once you are promoting them from one class to another class, how do you cater to this difference and see that all of them have actually reached the level that you want them to reach?
So here the competence gaps are not only grade to grade. They're also within the class, because we take each child as a separate entity. So each child has their own style of learning, own level of basics that they need to have for that class, their own pace of learning. They may have their own challenges. You know how emotional state of children also interferes in learning or aids in learning, right? So we have a lot of these aspects that we need to take care of. We do have a class system, and we do have curriculum that we follow. We follow the ICSE level curriculum, though we are affiliated to the state board, but we do have Exceed curriculum. So what we do is one is there's a lot of observation that happens around the child in all areas. So the art teacher is also observing, the sports teacher is also observing, in lunch and snack time, the timekeepers of that are observing, the aunties who work with them are observing them, the subject teachers are observing, the classmates are observing. Basically, there's a lot of data being collected on various aspects of the child. Secondly, everything that we do in Aurinco as part of assessment and testing is diagnostic in nature. Basically, we are trying to find out what worked, what didn't work, and how we can help the child further. Even children are trained to be diagnostic in nature. So if they're studying for a test and they don't get, say, 20 on 20 and they get 15, they actually sit down and think, why I didn't get the 5? Was it because I wasn't focused in class? Was it because I didn't ask questions when I should? Was it because I was absent and I was not proactive enough to come and clarify what I wanted? Was it because I didn't know something that was needed for this? Was it because I didn't do the work that was required for it? So many aspects. So this puts children and all of us in a state of agreed standards of work. So we know that, okay, we have to focus next week more on focusing in class or managing distractions, or we have to focus more on homework and these kind of things. And there's an openness, there's an acceptance of making mistakes. Correct. Not only for children, for teachers also. So it's very fine, and it happens all the time when a child actually gives feedback to the teacher one-on-one, saying, I did not understand the way you taught me today because whatever activity you did didn't make sense to me. Okay. Right? And the teacher understands that and makes that change. So this thing is very good, because now everyone is in a development stage. I want to develop, I want to improve, I want to do something, and I want to take ownership of that. Right? So that is at the child level. The teachers also do this. So there are peer observations and there is a coordinator observation and all, but all this is again diagnostic in nature. It doesn't have anything to do with pointing out and firing you or something. We've never fired a person.
It's not a performance appraisal, it's more for support.
So the teacher is also in the same process that the child is in. Right. So she's like, oh, I thought of this, I went to class, but I forgot how to do that, or suddenly that skipped my mind, or I should have just done this. Then many times when children tell, ma'am, can you do this in this way? Okay. So frankly, everyone is in that learning stage. Third comes the parents. So parents also have an openness in telling what has gone wrong, and frankly, they are the keepers of a philosophy. Whenever new teachers come and they're fumbling and they're trying to learn, they tell that, you know what, in Aurinco philosophy, this is something we don't do, but this teacher has given this kind of work or this kind of timeline or something, so please have a look into it. Okay. So the parents also support the teachers in making that change, and other children support new students in how they can adjust to the system and how they can also be diagnostic in nature. So year on year, when a diagnostic system is actually in place, you are only improving. There is no other option that you have, right? Yes. So curriculum guidelines also are like that. It's very logically looked at. If you have 30 lessons, it doesn't mean you have to do 30 lessons. Yes. There are 30 concepts. And there's a lot of mix match, and there's a lot of many things that you can do that are hands-on in say math, that can teach you a part of science or English, right? So a collective decision is taken as to how much of the curriculum has to be done, because we are completely into skilling. Because we are looking at how skilled can you be at grade 1, how skilled can you be at grade 2, and those are all linked to developmental stages. So when you look at developmental stages, you know that, right? For a child between 11th month to 2 years, the child should learn to walk. It's not on the 15th day of the 11th month that they have to walk. Right? So that gives that time and space for people to go. That's why we've never had these issues where someone is not doing well, or suddenly we have 10th grade and the child was not good enough, or had some gap or something. We've had children leave us also, no, because they go to different countries or they get transferred or whatever it is. So we've never had a gap. In fact, I can tell you 90% of the time children have been taken for higher classes. And then we've had to tell, please don't get overexcited with our children. They're still children.
Great. See, what you are doing in your school is something which has been professed into so many theories. So what you're saying is that it's a completely open system. It's a very supportive system, lot of collaboration, teacher as well as the student. Both of them are learning, and they're learning by diagnosing. And what you have added is one very strong element which probably every school should be looking into, and that is metacognition, wherein the children are themselves thinking about their own learning, seeing where they have made mistakes, seeing that how is it that they need to be making corrections. And when this kind of a thing the children gets into or the teacher gets into, there's a lot of intrinsic motivation to learn. And if that happens, then you can see that, yes, the progress starts happening. Nothing is happening for rote. It's the concepts, and those concepts are being understood. So I'm sure, as you said, that when the children are moving out to the other schools also, or to the other countries, they are being taken at a higher level, which means that they're performing at a much higher level just by learning and playing and learning rather. Learning probably for them is not a gruesome task. It is something which they are enjoying. And your parents are also a very supportive part of your school community. That's lovely. That's a very beautiful ecosystem which has been created. I just want to understand one more thing, and that's especially regarding class 11th and 12th, as you said that you've started with the design curriculum. So is it something which is related only to design in the sense you're talking only about architecture, maybe web designing, maybe design creation in terms of films and pre-post production and all of those kind of designs, or is it something which is catering to the other different careers as well?
So basically, the career aspect of Aurinco starts at 8th grade. So in grade 8, children do a 1-year study of themselves, mapping their attitude, aptitude, achievement to any passion that they have cultivated, and mapping that to a career. Completely, also completed by which colleges exist, what subjects are needed, what is the expense needed for me to get there, and so they have a 10-year plan ready.
Okay.
In grade 8. And that's why then they have full commitment from that time onwards. We never tell our children, if you don't do a 10th, something will happen, or 12th, something will happen, because they know what thing will happen. Right?
Okay.
So that is where it begins. And from then onwards, because they've already decided what they want to do, we start with internships and a lot of exposure in those areas. Okay. Design thinking for us is a way of life in Aurinco. So what are the steps of design thinking? One, you start with empathy, and then you find a problem to solve, and then you ideate, and then you come out with a solution, then you apply those solutions, and then you kind of figure out that this is what is the solution to this problem, right? And this for us is a way of life in Aurinco. Not only teachers, but the admin team, the children, everybody do this whenever they have a problem. Whether it is a fight with a friend, whether it is where should the water can be kept to, it's raining and the floor is getting soiled. So what can be the best way to change the seating or whatever. We all sit on the floor. We don't wear footwear. So for us, the problems are real life because we do everything with the hands. Nothing is thrown away. Children carry trash from home to school because everything is important for us.
Okay.
Right? And we have so many donated items. Everything that gets spoiled in the house, whether it's a phone or a tablet or a printer or a TV or a washing machine or a bike, everything is there in school.
Okay.
Right? So this design thinking and creating a product and coming up with something that is good for the world around was always there in Aurinco. And that's how when we started seeing more and more children wanted to have design thinking as part of any career they took up.
Yes.
Because design thinking, even a teacher can have design thinking. We in fact hold design thinking workshops for teachers, external teachers also. So that is how we started realizing that the children who went out of Aurinco were extremely unhappy with what they were receiving, because their life was 30% academics, which became 100% as soon as they went outside.
Okay.
They weren't feeling fulfilled at all.
Mhm.
and they were used to doing a lot of things. For them, academics was okay, kar lenge na, usme kya hai,
Yes.
right? So that is when we started thinking, okay, what do we do? Why are we letting out our children at a young age when they still have the power to do so much more? That's
Mhm.
how the college program came about. And like I said, the design preparatory college is focused only on design and careers in design, definitely.
Mhm.
But the same curriculum also has been applied to new age careers and teaching and psychology careers. For now, these three we have started, but we'll be having many more in this area. Definitely engineering, medicine also in the future, because I feel that children are just rushing and ending up in a medical college or an engineering college, again rushing for the next 5-10 years and then coming out. Somewhere it's not an enjoyable experience, and it can be made enjoyable. So I'm researching on that. In a couple of years we should be there.
Okay, great. That's lovely. Can you also tell me more about what are the various ways wherein your parents are contributing to this school?
So ask and you shall receive is the mantra in Orinco
Okay,
for
okay.
anybody, whether
Mhm.
it's a child or a teacher or a parent, or for me as the founder also. 3-4 years back, we actually wanted to expand and we wanted a new space. And since we are bootstrapped and we just work on the fees that we get, we never had the support system that you need to just set up a new space altogether.
Okay.
And neither did we have the expertise to do something like that. But we knew what we wanted. So we had spent a year in school, children and us, drawing and discussing what if we had like a huge amount of money and land, how would we want our school to be? So we had
Mhm.
spent a year, and we were just hoping some way some miracle will happen and this will happen, this will come true. It was
Okay.
just a fun exercise that we did for an entire year, but then we did find a space, and I found that space. I didn't know what to do. I went back and wrote to the parent community saying, "Hey, you know what, I found this space. I don't know what to ask the, how to negotiate for it and all of those things, but I did find a space in
Mhm.
this, in the place that we wanted, which was very close to where we were already."
Mhm.
And from then it was no looking back, because there was a set of parents who said, come, let's go and talk to the owner. There was a set of parents who said, come, let's make a business plan. Again, I have nothing to hide, right? So the accounts and all of those things, there's nothing to hide. It's
Mhm.
just all there. So we had business plans made. There was another set of parents who said, no, come, let's go and talk to bankers. And then we got loan. Then somebody introduced us to the most wonderful set of designers and architects and
Mhm.
contractors. They came on board. We had to have seed money, so the parents said, we've never given any donation or anything to Orinco, let's all put in 1 lakh. We all put in 1 lakh. We
Mhm.
had the seed money ready. We just, the whole school has come up. It's one of India's award winning buildings now.
Okay.
And we have a loan, we have a huge loan, but it doesn't scare at all, because we know we will get across this, because we've crossed many hurdles all amongst ourselves, right? Every time I put out a question to the parents saying, I am thinking of this, what do you think? And we will get n number of responses. Some will be positive, some will be negative, but they're all working towards making Orinco a better space. So we're very welcoming of those things. And they don't think, oh, she doesn't even know how to do this. How is she going to run a school?
Mhm. Mhm.
They don't measure me by my operational skills of how much I know about children or education.
Mhm.
I've put it out very clearly that I know certain things and I don't. And now, yes, I am an entrepreneur, well-known entrepreneur, and I've got awards for all of those things. But I still am open. Like this time when we had to go online, for example, when I put this information out and said, let's also go online. Let's see what it takes to go online. And
Mhm.
so we had a lot of discussion. We have a WhatsApp group. It's our most favorite group.
Okay.
I think in all the groups that we have.
Mhm.
So we went and I asked them, and many parents said, in my office we're using this, in that office we're using this. This didn't work, that didn't work. Some people who are in the education industry, they said something. So we researched within 5 days,
Mhm.
without spending anything. We were up and running.
Okay.
And we had new regulations made. We tried some things, and the next 5 days, feedback forms were floating in and out, because
Mhm.
we were trying new things, and we had told all the parents, finish a class, write what you feel. So
Mhm.
children were writing feedback, teachers were writing feedback, parents were writing feedback. So within 5 days, we had everything sorted,
Okay.
and we are completely online for a hands-on school, which
Mhm.
is totally thinking based. like you said, metacognition is our
Yeah.
is the way we do actually
Yes.
things.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you won't believe the quality of classes is much better than what we used to do in school,
Okay. Okay.
because now there are certain things that are available, like we put all our teachers on Moodle, so that the planning is at a totally different level. Now
Mm-hmm.
they can pick and make lessons out of a lot of internet resources, because things
Mm-hmm.
are online. Children can click here and there.
Correct.
Earlier it was like every child needs to have a laptop in school, and we were very media averse, so we've raised our children as less as possible on media.
Okay.
So
Okay.
all those used to come in between, but now I think, other than missing sports and face-to-face interaction, because we are extremely close to our children and children are also very close to each other, other than that, we're doing fantastically well.
So, as you said that you are more media averse, which means, I mean, what do I understand of it? Is it that the children are not going too much on internet, searching on internet, taking out stuff from there?
Yeah,
Uh,
so as much as possible till sixth grade, we do not have any computer related projects and all of those things. We do teach computers, scratch programming, and all of that we teach. We
mm,
don't have the typical computer subject of teaching CPU and all of those things. I think
okay.
all children know that nowadays.
Mhm.
At home, also, they watch intelligent stuff more with parents, cartoons, and all of that, which are senseless. We don't do it.
Mhm.
Also, because children are trained to do so many hands on stuff, we don't have time to do all those things,
Okay.
right? So we don't have, and parents also believe in something like that, so they spend a lot of time. They do not really have TVs or laptops becoming babysitters for children. So
Mhm.
because of that, and we sensitize them, they know what happens if you raise children that way.
Alright.
Even now, I think, other than just being online, most of the time children are doing offline work, and we don't believe in these mindless worksheets and all of those things.
Right.
We're so doing it simply to kill time. That kind of work we won't give. So most of the time, I think metacognition is at its all-time high now.
Okay. All right. But it's a little intriguing because in this age, we see that the children, they get naturally drawn towards these digital devices. They naturally want to search some things or get quick answers. So how is it that the children are not, doing all that stuff, and they are not getting addicted so much to the mobile phones or to the laptops, and they're spending their time elsewhere? I think this, if the parents or the educators get an answer to this, that how is this happening, probably it will be a great help to them. Can you just, uh, how
It's
is
a
it?
practice and a way of life that we have to get into. Right from preschool, we tell parents to help children understand the difference between a home phone and a work phone.
Mm-hmm.
The parents' phones are work phones. The parents' laptops are work laptops, right? And we usually, most of us don't have cable TV at all. We have subscriptions
Mm-hmm.
to Netflix and Amazon Prime and various things, and most of us have internet TVs. If possible, there are also families that can't afford that. I'm not saying everybody has, but
Yeah.
whoever has, we
Mm-hmm.
are not on cable network at all. So because of that, what happens is you can curate experiences.
Mm-hmm.
So for preschool, completely we do not advocate any kind of digital media at all, and they don't also, because we don't have a smaller durations preschool. Our children are there with us till 2:30.
Okay.
So that helps, because when they go home, they
They're
eat, they play,
tired.
and all. By 6 o'clock, 6:30, everybody's sleeping.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps. But as a culture, in school, we don't use mobile phones and all in front of children. Not that we are trying to hide it from them, but
Yeah.
they see it that it's used for more for work. Secondly, the parents also tell them that this is for work, and say they don't just hand it out to them for various, just to keep them busy. Like I said, we keep our children extremely busy in a lot of activities. I'm not speaking about paid activities where you send them for dancing, singing all the time and block their time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm speaking about projects that they do, and they're so addicted to making best out of waste that they're forever doing something or the other like that.
All right. All right.
So just being busy helps. Third is homes are also, we tell the parents to design homes, the stuff in their homes in such a way that you don't have like a TV sitting there right in front that you feel like switching on. It should be somewhere in some room,
Yeah.
frankly. so that your spaces that you're using as a community at home should aid more of doing things together, sitting with each other, talking to each other, and things like that. After first grade, we do tell parents to show them certain videos and certain programs on the TV, which you cannot generally show the child. So you want to show the insides of the earth, or you want to show a volcano, or you want to show a giraffe, or the Amazon river, or how things are made, how are biscuits made, how are whatever made. You cannot do that, right? And our children are at a very high level because of the amount of freedom and thinking that we allow. They're constantly thinking of things beyond. So the questions are beyond, which are generally not answerable by parents easily. Right? So then we allow, but parents actually curate these programs, and it is spread over a week, say about 1 hour of television or something per week, and they sit and watch with the child, and it's more of an interaction. So slowly children start looking at media as a educational thing. So when they grow up to be 5th grade or 6th grade or something like that, even if they watch, they are automatically doing these things because that's the only way they have watched anything. Right? And somewhere around 5th, 6th grade also comes the need, I want to play video games or something like that. So again, as a group, we all know that, so PUBG, when it came, some children did get to know that because of apartment complexes and all, did want to do that, did do that also. And we had to call everybody and explain to them, and we did presentations on how bad it is and all, and immediately everybody got off. And something else was brought in. So again, parents said, I found this game, this is good. So maybe on a weekend, 1 hour the child plays. So we are not trying to tell the child this is not good, don't do this. We're not trying to raise them in a fanatical way, but we're trying to give them this. Then we had social media. So some years back, we had this issue where all the 8th graders suddenly got on WhatsApp because of their parents' mobiles, and had this group talks and all of that, and how much that affects, because next day they'll come and that'll get into a fight, and then there'll be separate groups made and all of that. So the minute we realized this, again we got all parents, children together, help them understand why we should do this, not do this and all. There was resistance from children for some time. They were upset with me as to no other principal does all these things, why are you doing all these kind of things? All our friends are there. Slowly they realized. So it's now they are on WhatsApp. But again, they do understand the pitfalls of it. Parents are more vigilant, so it's not really necessary. And once they come to 7th, 8th grade, we teach them software programming. So again, they see computers and all as something that you can do things with. So children are into app development and all those things. So it kind of keeps you busy. Even if you slip into watching a serial or something, you want to get back to actual business, right? So we do that. From about 5th grade, we start talking about different scenarios that people have gotten themselves into because of misuse of the media and internet and all of these things. So they know that, okay, this is what I should do, I should not do, and all of that. Some children will slip into certain things and then come out of it. But they openly tell, ma'am, I'm getting addicted to gaming now. Sunday I played so much. Now in class also I'm remembering that. So that's a good time to tell the child, see, this is exactly what we were speaking about. It kind of stays in your mind, and it kind of bleeds into other things that you have to do. And then everybody understands. So basically, it's not about just hiding things or stopping things or putting a rule to it. It's about the journey. It's about the journey. We all just discount the benefit of a journey in learning things. You can learn good things, but you also have to learn to unlearn bad things. It takes time.
Correct. Okay. I think you've highlighted some of the very important things. One is that it's not always necessary that you get all your answers from the internet. It's better that you do things yourself. So probably you're creating such kind of projects, and the children are solving this kind of problems by handling the stuff themselves and not just getting the direct answers from internet. But if we see India, we have got schools which have got massive strength, and the student staff, the teacher staff is actually less in number in comparison, the ratio, if I'm talking about. So, how do you see that this kind of a system fitting into that massive numbers?
So, 2-3 things we have to understand over here. Okay. Who are these children that are getting into schools? There is a category divide, whether we like it or not, right? There are these children for whom education itself is the passport to the next level. right? So there are these children for whom literacy and getting to the next level is in itself a goal, right? And that's the major part of our schooling requirement, if you see, where the general basic needs itself have to be satisfied. So that's why you need midday meals, and that's why you need an infrastructure to play, and you need children to be in open spaces or whatever it is. So India is doing fantastically well on the public education system in terms of making these available. Then you get the next strata of people who kind of have their basic needs satisfied, right? You just want the children to have more exposure in life, and that's where you have a little elite schools which have like 24, 25 in a class, and you have a bigger ground, and you have more possibilities and all of these things. There also it is still survival, but there is this different set of students that are available who are beyond the roti kapda makan. That is not what they're going to strive for, because all of that has been satisfied in their homes in some way, right? And those are the children that should be nurtured towards having some kind of work or aim in life that is about making a difference to the people around them.
Correct.
And that those are the kind of children that should go to these spaces which are 500, 600 in a school, where there is a lot of nurturing happening from all sides, because you need leaders also. Right, you need children who will not think of how much am I going to get out of this. Adults who will actually start making a difference to the world. So the goal of Aurinco has always been to raise sensible, sensitive children who will be of some use to the society around them, who will be agents of social change.
Correct.
Right? How do you do that? That you will do only if your basic needs are satisfied. And these are those children, and there are a lot of them. So there's a need to think of education from many different angles. Imagine if all the teachers in all the schools get out of download the syllabus in the child's mind to what skill can I give today to my child? Can he read better? Can he spell better? Can he think better? Can he write better? If just that skill-based education mindset change happens, you will see a big wave of change.
Yeah. So, right? Chetna, actually, you spurred a lot of questions in my mind right now. One, because you have talked about the education system in India. How is it that it should change? So, what you're saying is that already things which are existing are fine, but there should be some more spaces like Aurinco for some of the selected students who would actually bring about the change. Now, these are the torchbearers, or maybe the change makers, you can say, who will bring massive change once they get into the work field. So one is about the leadership. Second is about the teachers. How do you create such teachers who are more focused on skilling? So these are the two things. Third aspect, what kind of parents are coming to you? Is it those absolute elite parents who want something different for their children? They are coming to you, or do you feel that there are different kind of parents also who are coming from, who are belonging to a different socio-economic strata? So that's another thing which I would like you to address.
Yeah. So the easiest question is the parent thing. Everybody comes, all kinds of people. Okay. But since this is a bootstrap place, I feel sometimes fees comes in the middle of making that decision. We have supported amongst ourselves also when we see a deserving family and we feel that we need to take them in. We have taken them in. We all have pooled in money together to, balance that gap. The things for leadership in schools, and I consult many leaders of schools across the country. We need to relook at what do we really want out of this whole system, and then this should be done on a yearly basis, because knowledge is getting outdated every 24 hours. Forget about year.
That's true.
Right? And so we need to look into this. The other thing to look into it is, for example, when I started recruiting I generally want people who are from corporate to enter into education. Okay. And the reason is very clear. They have studied and tried to be in a system after that and seen that what they got educated in didn't really work for them, because they didn't know how to use their education, and they had to get on new skills to just survive in corporate. Second thing is they have traveled enough. They have seen different kind of people, different kind of things that happen, economies, different things, right, across the world, even culture, food, people, language, whatever they have seen. Exposure is more.
Yeah.
And they know the real world where these children are going to get into, at least a part of it, because of course it will change over 20 years or whatever, but at least they know. So I would any day want a person from corporate to get into teaching. I'm not saying the other teachers are not good enough or something like that. I'm not speaking that corporate people will be better than teachers that are there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just saying that having a balance makes sense. Thirdly, I have always seen that people who have varied exposure, they tend to look at children in a very different way. They give more importance to the experience of learning than just the output. And the teachers who are existing, like who have been teachers from a long time, and India has a huge number of these amazing people. They can bring in the other aspect as to understanding children and the whole system of learning and curriculum and how to plan it, how to finish that much in one whole year, how to correct, how to ensure that this child who's getting 10 out of 20, how can we make that 15 out of 20 and 20 out of 20, because they have experience in that, right? And the people who have the technological understanding will say, hey, why memorization? That's not really the way. When we think of something else, right?
Correct.
It's a very beautiful amalgamation then.
Yes.
So this kind, that is what I'm saying. I don't know what works for all schools, because all schools are unique, just like how all children are unique. The ecosystem is different. Maybe the people who are running the school are different. The principal may have some ideas. The chairman may not agree. I understand all these aspects. There's a lot of fear. There's a lot of competition. And it's very difficult to work in the space that I have. I have never competed with anyone, and that's why everyone likes to collaborate with Aurinko. I have so many schools which say, can we send our teachers for a week? They'll just learn and come back. And I have nothing to hide. I'm like, yeah, please come. Copy as much as you can. Right? I understand it's not possible for everybody to do something like that. But in Bangalore, at least, we have all principals have come together, and we are on our WhatsApp groups, and we meet often and all, and we share a lot of learning from each other. And we not only share learning, but we share resources and a lot of things. When we didn't have a lab for Aurinko, when we were in a small space, there were 3 schools who helped me in allowing that space to be used.
So, Chetna, I mean, the reason I'm going ahead and doing this leadership talks is to basically talk to many people who are doing different things in the field of education and try to figure out as to what is that best fit which will make India, lead the education in the world. And what I can gather from you, what you said was that if the people from corporate, they come into the education, some of them, those who are willing to, they come into education, they bring a lot of good things, and they also understand that skilling is important. Now, if such people are in the leadership positions and they create these small learning spaces all over the country, and then any teacher coming in, they are getting skilled because there is a right leader over there, there is a collaborative and cooperative culture. And we have many such schools wherein there are a lot of such children who are, getting education. Probably from here we can start building up on our education system, and eventually things will start changing. What do you say about it?
Yeah, I think so. If we liberalize education, that's one of the greatest thing we can have. We need to completely change the education programs we have for teachers. Or at least allow new teacher training programs to come. Like Azim Premji University is doing an excellent job in the MA in education program they have. They come to Aurinko because, like you started off this conversation with, they said your school has certain things that are seen only in books. So we want our teachers to experience that. So we have them come to Aurinko for a lot of their internships and also their practicums. So like that, Aurinko, I am coming up with a teacher training program that's going to be completely on thought leadership and how they can, I'm not going to be training them on any teacher training material, but I'm going to set them on a trail where they will construct it themselves. And come up with being their own kind of a teacher. Somebody that's so unique that no 2 teachers will come out of the teacher training program will be the same, right? So somewhere where we can affiliate these kind of courses to and that are more accepted. Third is, I think schools should understand. So the mindsets have to change, and whichever schools I've worked in, this is the mindset change that I'm working on. I'm not working on your curriculum or whatever, because you know best. You know what works for you. I'm not going to work on your curriculum. I'm going to work only on your mindset. How can teachers' mindset change? How can parents' mindset change? How can principals' mindset change? How can the promoters' mindset change? So schools can actually divide into what they are actually looking at and do a fantastic job of what they're doing, right? And another thing is to go completely transparent. You don't know the amount of help that comes in when you're transparent. You just need to ask, and there are n number of people wanting to do things. We actually in the corporate field find schools to be closed when we want to do a lot of things. And if you open that up, there are n number of people wanting to do so many things. The other thing is parent community engagement is not happening for parents at all from schools. We are lecturing, or we are demanding, or we are just alienating. How are we empowering parents? What training programs do we have? Are we investing in their growth? Because unless a child has parents and teachers on the same platform, the child is going to have a very confused upbringing, right? And the parents don't know enough. They don't know that collaboration is the new word. It's not competition. It's and there are n number of careers that have come by. I think that is the change we need to have. Students also, are we boxing them? Right? Students are at a completely different level than any adult around them. I am amazed to see children the way they are and what all they can actually do. They're way beyond and more developed than the gene pool has ever been. Right? So our limitations somewhere are becoming their limitations, and all the student related issues that we are seeing across our country are because we are not engaging them enough. We don't have resources enough. We don't believe in them enough. We're not giving them enough opportunities, and we're not giving them a free open canvas to paint their own painting. We're crowding them, frankly. So that is something that we need to look at, and it can be in tiny small things. Ask for example, I take a class, 7th grade class and 6th grade class, and this January I realized my 3 months from January to March are going to be extremely heavy on my other work, and somehow doing that class meant I have to give it away to somebody else because I just couldn't find the time. And I spoke to those children. They love me a lot and they didn't want to let me go. And I said, you know what, the only option we have is we have 6 lessons and we have 6 weeks, and I can't do it. So what can we do? And they said, why don't we do one thing? We will all take one lesson. Two children will take one lesson, and we'll try and do this, and we'll see what comes out of it. It will be an experience for us.
Great.
So I said, but Aurinko has its own philosophy. I cannot ask you to, just, mess it up, right? You can't go to a class and just do some random lesson. I don't want that. If you want to be teachers, you have to be an Aurinko teacher. So I'll give you the lesson plan template. I will teach you how to do that. There will be a curriculum coordinator who will sign off your lessons. You should have all the hands-on activities and everything that we want to have in a lesson that we make it imperative for a teacher is imperative for you. Okay. And so that is what you have to do. Are you ready for it? And they said yes. Okay. You won't believe it. They actually went, took lesson plan templates, interviewed other teachers, figured out what they do, how they do, understood the curriculum manual, planned their lessons, planned activities, and then they suddenly understood that, they need resources to do those, right? Then they understood the admin processes. How do they raise a resource request? How do they actually get those things? How do they divide the children? The first time the first group had a lesson, they sent away the children on some activity, they never came back. Okay. The period finished. Okay, then they realized, this is not what we have to do. Then they had to request the admin to give them an extra period. What is the process for that? Basically, in 6 weeks, they finished the 6 chapters. I have video recordings of them. They are like any other teacher would have done it. That is what children are. And it's not because it's
would have been so much more had teacher would have done, and the learning would have been much more than that.
Between you and me, I think the classes were much better than what we would have done as teachers, because they brought in so many aspects that we didn't know. Especially it was social studies. So they brought in so many contexts and so many things that we ourselves didn't know. It was like all teachers were sitting and listening to that class. So what I'm trying to say is this is not only in Aurinko, and they're not some magical kids. I'm saying every child has the potential. Are we willing to push them? Right? Because we're scared.
Creating in that environment. You created that environment. You motivated them. they had the desire inside them, and that desire was something which you had
And they have
created
it.
in them.
They always have it. I've never met a child who doesn't want to learn or doesn't want to grow, doesn't want to discover. Only when they have nothing to do, they become very difficult to handle.
Yeah.
Right? And all I had to do was tell the parents, look, I don't have time. As a teacher, I need to step out, which they're not allowing. And this is what they want to do. We're taking a risk. If 6 lessons don't get completed, we'll see how we'll do it later on. But we'll figure out. And you won't believe it. They gave homework. They corrected the question answers. They did a test also. Because being a teacher means doing the whole cycle, right?
Yes.
So everything was done. I didn't do anything in 6 weeks.
Great.
So that is what. So are we limiting children because of our own limitations?
Yeah.
And what I told you need not have a small school and all that. If you realize everything that I'm speaking is about mindset change.
Yes.
I'm not speaking about number of children at all. And I've worked with schools which have 60 children in a class, which have like 3,000 children. It is just the mindset. There will be at least incremental changes which you can start at a small stage and keep changing that. You're at least a progressive school, if not anything else.
Yeah.
Right? And India needs a progressive system.
Great. Absolutely amazing and lovely talking to you. There are a lot of good ideas which have come into, and I've got now a more clearer picture. Though I've never visited Aurinko, but I think I can now actually visualize what are the things which would be happening inside the school. I must compliment you for running a beautiful school. Continue doing that, and I would want that as many educationists you can infect with your enthusiasm, with your ideas, with your thoughts. That would be good for the education world in India.
So Aurinko is open, okay. We have created this as a small learning space for everybody. So whoever is listening to this, you're welcome to Aurinko, to come, to stay, to learn, to experiment. If you have something, I have so many people come and try. This is an idea I have in education. I want to try, because it's easier to try in Aurinko because children are very open and they give direct feedback, right? So please, all of you are welcome.
Great. That's so nice. Chetna, thank you so much for giving your time. And I'm sure this talk is going to be benefiting so many others who are seeing this. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard Dr. Chetna Keni talk about how students in her school are involved in design thinking, in complex problem solving, in learning through hands-on approaches, and thereby acquiring all the 21st century skills. That's all for now, and I'll be back soon. Keep watching Leadership Talks.